up anyway. Hey guys, so usually we do a countdown, but we're not doing a countdown today. We're just getting on with it.
Yeah, and basically we've done one episode, so it is whatever we want it to be.
I know. This is our second episode of the Skill Scoop Hangout, which is a monthly hangout where we go through some of our previous editions of the Skill Scoop newsletter, what's going on new, and instead of last time, which was pre-recorded, and then we just uploaded it while we were figuring stuff out, this whole studio idea. This time we're actually going live. So if you happen to have signed up or you see it on either LinkedIn or YouTube, then you'll see this call to action where it says like, drop in. So I'm going to actually open both of those screens up while we're recording, because if you're commenting in LinkedIn, we have to see it in LinkedIn. And if you're commenting on YouTube, we have to see it.
So for the people who have never heard of us before, and you're like, what the heck is Skill Scoop? We cover an industry called learning and employment records, digital credentialing, workforce development, a bit of HR as well. And we try to explain these concepts, which we think are the future of hiring, in ways that are digestible and understandable to the average person. And then we also write for the industry specifically. So we get a little bit nerdy sometimes, but we always try to make sure that it is understandable to somebody who's just coming into the industry. So that's kind of what we cover. And did I miss anything that we kind of do in this newsletter?
Also, we're experts. So I think it's worth mentioning, because there's a lot of posers out there, that we're both experts. I mean, I've been in the space for over a decade, and I came to the space from the classroom. So I came from a practitioner's perspective and tried to get a hold on exactly where things were going and make sure that they were grounded in real measurable impact, instead of getting lost in like the business and the technology and all that kind of thing. So I think that also separates what we're doing here from some of the other work that folks are doing across the ecosystem. I like to see what we're doing as being more vendor neutral and like product agnostic, which is, I think, a really important characteristic of this kind of thing.
And I would not call myself an expert at all at LER, which I think is the fun part of our dynamic, because I like to look at it through a newbie lens. And my expertise that I claim is definitely marketing and just analyzing human interactions. So I'm really good at getting into the mind of a particular target audience and understanding what their needs and pain points are. So I think that is a really fun dynamic that we bring to Skill Scoop. I guess I'm becoming more of an expert. I'm earning my digital keep here with all the stuff that we put together, but I wouldn't describe myself as an expert just yet. I like to keep the newbie freshness to our dynamic. Okay, Rob, what are we chatting about today?
Yes. So today we're going to talk about the two previous issues that were covered in April. So it's May 8th. So we're going to look at the last two editions, although we just published an edition this week. So we're actually not going to talk about that one in this Hangout. We're going to talk about the two editions before that, which were published on April 8th, entitled What Autism Teaches Us About Talent Evaluation, which was written by Thania. It was extremely good. And the second issue was published on April 22nd, and it was entitled Stop Asking the Wrong ROI Question About Learners, plus 5 Ways to Avoid Employee Burnout. And this is when I get to share the sad news, which is that life happens, and Colin is going to be on our next Hangout. He wrote that article in the April 22nd edition, and I'm going to speak to some of the things that he mentioned in that edition, and we're going to talk about the editions generally, but next time, Colin's going to be joining us in June. So if you want to tune in then, we're going to start to have guests. So the first one was pre-recorded. This one is live. The next one, we're going to start featuring guests. So this is going to evolve over time.
Do we want to wait until Colin comes on next month and we can dive into his entire topic?
I'd like to talk maybe a little bit about ROI, learning, mobility, and LER. So like, I love Colin. We've worked together for a long time. He has his perspective. He wrote the article. It's really good. I'm just going to drop my own perspective, because next time it's just going to be the Colin show. I'm not going to say anything. So this time I think I'm just going to just mention a few things, because like I said, this is not my first rodeo. I have some takes, so I thought maybe we could go back and forth on that.
Okay, great. Is that your first one that we're jumping into?
Well, let's look at the time. I am a project manager by trade, so let's see where we're at. We have a run of show also. We have show notes and things like that going on, which is
better.
I like to come prepared. I am a Eagle Scout, former, current, I guess. Technically, you never lose that designation. So there's a fun fact for people who are watching, is like if you join Boy Scouts as a child, and you have to be 11 to join, so 11 to 18. Once you're 18, you're done unless you've completed the Eagle Scout training. So those 7 years, you have all this time. It's like 1,000 requirements, literally. And like if you finish them, you obtain the rank of Eagle Scout. And if you do not finish them in time, then you were just a scout as a child, and you do not have a persistent credential that continues with you with your life. So it's analogous to this kind of micro credential space. So I thought I would take us down that little rabbit hole.
Things I never did, Girl Scouts, any of that stuff. I'm looking at our show notes. So it looks like we're going to chat about the autism article first. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Also, before we get into things, just in case you're short on time and you're only joining us for like 5 minutes, before we get into it, I want to remind you to subscribe at skillscoop.com. There's a little bar at the bottom. So if you want more information about the editions or Skillscoop in general, if you're new to the show, then visit skillscoop.com. There's a QR code up there. You can scan it and look silly with your phone out for a second, but I promise it'll take you to the website. You could subscribe for free. And I actually just pulled up the LinkedIn. So if you're in LinkedIn and you want to leave a comment, feel free to just drop it in the comments on LinkedIn, and we'll include you in the show. And don't forget to like and share on YouTube and LinkedIn. Okay, those are my obligatory mentions. So now we can get into the article, Tanya. And why don't you introduce it, and I'll pull it up on screen so we can look at it.
Okay, great. So I have ADHD, and I write articles often for different publications. And we wanted to highlight that it was Autism Awareness Month, and it had me thinking a lot about autism in general. And I was like, well, I wonder what autism and LERs and digital badges, if I do a quick Google search, like what does that bring up? And to be honest, I didn't find very much. And so I was thinking about how impactful it would be if we could actually capture and recognize learning in ways that have been historically ignored. And many people in the neurodivergent world have a hard time, because a lot of the soft skills that the corporate world values is not something that a lot of neurodivergent people are automatically good at. That doesn't mean that people can't be neurodivergent and be all of the soft skills, right? But when I'm speaking about these things, I'm speaking about them generically. I'm not trying to offend anybody. So what I wanted to do is figure out, like, okay, well, if we're evaluating the workforce and there's all of these people who have autism and they bring incredible things to the job market, where is the disconnect of them being hired and utilizing their talents? Because I actually remember last year at the Digital Badge Summit in Colorado, this gentleman came up to me and he was sharing with me that he had, I believe it was autism. And we were talking about being neurodivergent and how, like, we have all these skills that other people at first find weird, but like having the ability to hyper focus as a neurodivergent person is a superpower. Like, I can go in and learn something and become an expert so freaking quickly, and I will become obsessive about it, and I will learn all these things about it. But on the other side of it, that also means that I can get burnt out, or that if I'm not interested in a topic, it is very, very, very difficult for me to execute on it. I hate small talk. I hate fakeness. Sometimes I can be too direct and that can come off as rude. So, like, there's all these other things that go along with neurodivergence. And this article was figuring out, like, what are the opportunities that lie within the neurodivergent and autistic market. And what we found was that research is saying that there's a bunch of untapped talent there. And there are some really great organizations that are trying to close that gap. So currently, my research found that about 85% of autistic adults are currently unemployed. And I don't think it's because they're not qualified. I just think that the qualifications by which we are determining that this talent pool is hireable are the wrong qualifications. It's just about understanding them better. And so I think that's where LER, digital credentials and badges really matter. And some cool stuff that's happening in the industry is Microsoft has a neurodiverse hiring initiative. There's also organizations, I'm going to really butcher their name, but it's Specialistieren, I think. And they're like a nonprofit that helps connect employers to neurodivergent and autistic people, to help connect them and having them understand what that qualified talent pool looks like and how to shift towards skills-based assessments. So yeah, there's a bunch of different organizations that I think are really making headway in this and making it a possibility to tap into this market and this talent market, if you will. And it's an exciting thing. And I know Rob's quiet because he has... Rob, do you want to chime in here?
Yes. So if you see behind the scenes, the screen's changing and things are coming up, and like, so I'm like co-host slash like producer slash tech support as we're doing this thing. I just want to make this Hangout as accessible as possible. I don't want it to just be us talking, right? So I wanted to show you the article. It's short and sweet. It's really endearing. I love it, Thania, when you write articles that are about you, because I feel like the perspective is so authentic. And I just think that some of the core arguments you brought up were really smart. So in the article, you mentioned that the traditional hiring was really never neutral. We have this idea that it's egalitarian, you know, the best person gets, you know, the job kind of thing. But that's really not the case. Sometimes people are the best at what they do and they still struggle to get that recognition, which is ultimately what all of this digital badging and pathways and stuff is about. It's about changing the way, you know, learning and competency is recognized. And I thought that number that you mentioned was pretty shocking, that 85% of autistic adults are unemployed or underemployed. So that's not really a talent gap. That's a humongous problem. That's not a gap. That's like a chasm. That's, you know, something that is impossible for most folks to get over. And then lastly, what you mentioned around resumes and unstructured interviews and body language reading being a, you know, kind of a secret requisite for getting a job is really what systematically excludes neurodivergent candidates from those jobs. And I'm happy that we have a dialogue here, at least in the United States, about neurodivergence and, you know, how common it is. And, you know, as a former educator, I'm just going to say that, like, you know, accommodations, IEPs, differentiation, like these are the hallmarks of a great instructor. They recognize that it's one curriculum, but it's 36 students. So it's really 36 variations on a curriculum. And I think that hiring managers, you know, they're trying to move the other direction. For the sake of fairness, they're trying to standardize things, but in so doing, that one size fits all doesn't really fit anyone individually. And there was actually a really, really good book written about this. The End of Average is what it's called. It was written by, I believe he's a Harvard professor, but it's a great, I don't want to spoil it. It's one of the best books I've ever read, but it's about how basically this tendency towards averagarianism, it really is no good for any person individual, which is kind of like a, you know, you get a one size fits all t-shirt and it's, you know, triple extra large. And it's like, yeah, I guess it fits over my body, but it doesn't really fit me as an individual. Anyways.
One of the things that we were prepping for this Hangout today was, you know, Rob admitted, he's like, well, I don't know if I don't want to talk about the autism thing because, like, I don't want to say the wrong thing, and like maybe we should just not really, you know, dive too deep into it. And I was like, no, this is exactly why we need to have these conversations, because I feel like a lot of us have that hesitation around things that don't pertain to us, and not in a way that is prejudice or bias, but more so not wanting to say the wrong thing or be offensive. But I think that's why these conversations matter and why it's good to be able to have them and ask questions and learn about it and why we want to write articles about things like this. One of the things that I mentioned in the article was that I am terrible at the IQ style type tests, assessments that you have for hiring process, right? Like when you want to find a job for marketing, especially. There's a company, I think it's called Crossover, and they're like notorious for using these IQ tests. And as a marketer, I find nothing in those IQ tests relevant to what I do in the real world. And I get so frustrated because there's nothing on there that's like, I have ADD, I can't take your damn test, but I'm a great ass marketer. Oh, sorry, I used a bad word. My bad. I don't know if we're allowed to do that. Here we are, Hangout.
We're not on TV. We're on the internet.
Yeah. Welcome to Thania, guys. She likes a good F-bomb once in a while. So yeah, the IQ test and things aren't a good identifier of skills. And I think moving as a collective in the hiring world and in society to leaning in more into these digital records and digital credentials about what are the skills that you can actually do is so much more telling than any IQ test that doesn't take into account all of these other things. I've met plenty of people who are brilliant at IQ tests and would bomb at a marketing job. So it's like, we got to find the way to do both, is like identify if they're a good culture fit, but also identify the skills that they're bringing to the table. So yeah, that was our lovely autism article in celebration of autism awareness. And yeah, it was great and exciting to write about that. What's next on our topic list?
Well, before we moved away from it, I just wanted to underpin kind of the flip, is what I call it in my notes. So the core argument are those things that I mentioned earlier about, averagarianism and egalitarianism really not being the hallmarks of the hiring process. And anyone who's ever gone through the hiring process, I'm sure, would reinforce what I said. But some of those pioneers that you name dropped, I want to make sure that folks, got those. So Microsoft's Neurodiversity Hiring Initiative is something that we used as research for this article. And Specialistern is the global org that's placing autistic talent in skilled roles. And then Digitability is something that we used as a reference in that article as well. Credentials for autistic workers in tech. The flip on this, though, the good news is that learning and employment records, or LERs, and digital credentials really let candidates show verified capability before they ever walk in the room. So the idea is that they've been assessed without being assessed on the spot. So anyone who's ever struggled with, test anxiety, right, which is kind of a very mild form of some of these things, is, some people are great test takers, right? So I walked into the SATs and I crushed it the first time because I'm very good at tests, which is good because I'm very bad at homework. So my GPA was just okay. But if you test me, I'm like, yeah, like, let's go, let's rock and roll. Like, I liked sports, that kind of stuff. But
I'm the opposite.
Right. Well, most people are the opposite, frankly. So I think that tests, any professor, anyone who's interested in learning science will tell you that a test, especially a standard assessment, is a particularly poor proxy for skill and competency. Not just that, but the credential really should become the first signal. So it's not the handshake or the eye contact or the way that someone phrases a cover letter. It's really, can someone do this job? So these kinds of skills-based credentials, the anchor point for the Skill Scoop newsletter, really came into focus in this article. And I really like how you threaded that needle. So just a key takeaway here, not everything should have to be translated, right? It should be, can you do it? Can you not do it, right? There isn't this secret like gotcha behind the scenes. And don't even get me started on IQ tests. Anyone who thinks an IQ test says anything about intelligence probably wouldn't do well on an IQ test. It's all I'm saying. It's one of those things that just, it sends a signal of intelligence, but anyone who's intelligent will tell you that kind of assessment really doesn't say anything about intelligence. I don't want to get Mensa letters, but like, them's the breaks. So I'm just gonna.
It's rage bait. We'll take it. It's fine.
That's my version of like cursing on the live stream. It's just being like, what are you gonna do about it? Like, I hate to break it to you. All right. Okay. So let's move into our second segment here. But before I do, I want to ask you a question, Thania.
Okay.
So when you've been in a process, a hiring process, have you ever been filtered out because of how the evaluation was designed? Do you feel like you were ever interviewed and maybe you were filtered out because of the evaluation, not necessarily your skills and competencies?
Yeah. I think that the test that I mentioned earlier is like, oh, this role is amazing. I would be so good at it. And then I get to the stupid IQ test. I'm like, great. I don't even get to make the interview.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure people who are watching this have their own version of that. Trying to think if I was ever taken out.
I mean, how do you know? They don't tell you.
That's right. Like they don't tell you, sorry, like it was this thing that you weren't even aware of that you were being weeded out. I mean, there's so many things, right? Like here's a thing that's not related to an IQ test, but when I was in college, I left home early. I was out the door at 17. I was like, I had my own apartment, I had my own job, I had been paying my own bills for all this time. And the car that I had was like held together with like literally rubber bands and like tape.
Oh,
And my car broke down on the way to an interview, which would happen constantly. And like, I lost the job. And it wasn't because I couldn't do the job. It was because like my unreliable car couldn't get me
right.
to the job, which ironically I could have fixed. Had I gotten the job, I could get a new car, right? You know what I mean? It's those things, those like invisible things that disqualify us. And I think that this is one version of that. But anyways, I feel like we should ask more questions of our audience. So I want you to think to yourself, was the process that was applied to your application ever filtered for something that was totally beyond your grasp and really shouldn't have been part, frankly, of the evaluation process? And if you're a hiring manager, has your hiring process ever filtered out someone who is great, someone is great, or filtered you out because of how the evaluation was designed? Let us know in the comments, or send us a message over at Skill Scoop. I would love to learn more about your lived experiences, and maybe we'll feature them on the next episode. Okay, are you ready for my segment now, Thania?
Yeah, born ready. Let's go.
All right, cool. Can you hedge for like 10 seconds while I bring up the article to the right?
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing that I always ask in interviews that's been really helpful is to ask the hiring manager, whoever the interviewer is, I'll ask them directly, like, is there anything in my resume and my experience that makes you think I'm not qualified for the job that I could help clarify?
Yeah, that's a good question. Especially, yeah.
It's kind of like dating. It's like, well, why don't you want to date me? And it's like, well, I didn't like that you wore boots to the date. And it's like, oh, well, actually, these boots are for my grandmother, and they're my lucky boots. And like, oh, the story behind it. You're like, oh, then those boots that's actually an asset, and you get to like spin it in a different way. So I love asking that in interviews, and I noticed that it worked a few times. They'd be like, actually, yeah, I noticed that you don't have that much like data background. I'm like, oh, well, that's because on my resume, the company didn't have there was a black hole between marketing and product. So I didn't get all the results from it. It's not that I'm not data driven or I don't know how to implement data into my strategy. It's just that I worked at startups and there wasn't enough money to dive into a data analysis or a data scientist, but it doesn't mean I don't have the capabilities. And I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And it would clarify that lane in a really great way. So there's your free interview tip of the day.
That's a great tip. I mean, especially for folks who it wouldn't occur to them that level of candor, like just, if you're thinking it. All right, now we're joined by Colin. No, I'm just kidding. He's on the cover. And like I said, he's going to be joining us during our next Hangout. Humongous fan. So I wanted to quickly just kind of go through some of the things that, occurred to me while I was reading the article and reflecting on it. I mean, really what we've got here is a few components. So the first thing is thinking about the wrong kind of ROI question. So most institutions are really asking themselves, what does this cost us, this shift to skills-based learning, recognition, and hiring? They're really focused on their institutional ROI. And I would argue that that's a third, actually, of the calculus that institutions should be doing when they're thinking about adopting learning and employment record systems. The right question is, what does the learner gain, and can they carry it with them? Right? That's the problem that we're solving for, right? So I think that reframing the question can be really powerful. And Colin mentioned this in his article, and it resonated with me. So in other words, the wrong unit of analysis for these kinds of problems isn't necessarily the institutional cost. It's really how the system gains as a function of that investment. And it's perfectly reasonable to try to measure that 100%. But any project manager who's earned their PMP will tell you that cost isn't measured strictly in dollars. It's also measured in hours. It's measured in, future returns. Like it's actually a more complicated formula. And frankly, I actually don't know if I have this pulled up on my computer, but Robert McGough of the Arkansas, I believe he's the chief data officer. He has been doing a ton of work in this space around braided funding models and sustainability with a $ instead of an S. And frankly, it's like the nerdiest thing in the world, but it was my favorite webinar that I ever did. So if you have more questions, feel free to follow up with us. I can send you the article. But there's a whole playbook, guidebook that he created. And I think that, there's a lot more being centered around ROI than you would think. People think it's like a lot of technology and it's like learning stuff, but actually like funding is, I would say, one of the 6 pillars of one of these ecosystems that actually runs like efficiently and grows over time and is generative. Okay, that being said, so there was a segment here as well on the community college story. And the idea is that learners are stacking credentials at a community college. They're working, they're making progress, and maybe they transfer to a 4-year institution using those credentials. But the credentials maybe don't transfer, so their progress disappears. And this is really structural abandonment, I believe is the phrase that Colin used. And I love this. And it's not a learner failure. If anyone has ever transferred between colleges, they'll know that, if their credits do transfer, suddenly, and in the best cases, they transfer as elective credits that are non-degree bearing, which means you basically have to start all over again with even more credits.
So I have I guess I'll call her a cousin. She's a cousin by marriage, but they're from Iran and they came here. She's a mom and she's getting her master's at UCLA in mathematical, I think it's mathematical engineering. I don't know. It's something super smart. And she's a complete awesome, I want to say the word badass. We're saying it. And yeah. She's a complete badass. And one of the problems, though, that she's now having is that she's graduating and she's like top of her class. She got a full ride scholarship, but she's a non-traditional student. And the problems that she encountered was that transferring all of her learning from Iran to the United States was a pain in the butt. The second part is that now that she's going to be graduating, she has all these skills, but she's afraid that she doesn't have enough cultural knowledge, that she doesn't have enough interpersonal skill sets that is cultural in order to adapt into a new company and to have the right things to say and to be able to do the small talk in the kitchen. And so as family, we're trying to support her in that. But I was explaining to my family about LERs and how great would it be if her time working at the bakery where she learned all these small business skills and she's so creative and detail oriented and she's great with humans, even if her English fluency isn't at 100, like how great would it be if she had a skills based resume and she had skills endorsed by her employer that she learned that had nothing to do with, baker, right? How much easier would it be for her to then now find a job as a graduate student of mathematical engineering from UCLA? Like that in and of itself should be enough to get her a job, but we all know that's not going to be true, going back to our earlier conversation. So then now you put it into the ROI of the university carrying. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I was told that college rankings are measured by how much their alumni donates, how active. Oh. Yeah. That like the college rankings are measured greatly by how much money their alumni contributes and how many alumni are active in their contributions financially.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm gonna have to follow up on that.
But if we're going through that logic, then like the more graduates you have who earn good money and then want to give back to your school, the better your university ranks on those like college whatever best lists. I went to Chapman University, shout out, go Panthers, D3 school. Nobody knew what Chapman was back in the day when I went there, and then I learned about that stat and I started telling all my friends like we have to give to Chapman, otherwise we're not going to rank in the rankings. I don't know if that's true or not, but I heard that it is. But if you think about like the big universities that are top, they have huge alumni and they have all kinds of fundraisers and all kinds of community and things. So I don't know if that's 100% true. But to the point of this article about transferring and how you're losing ROI on it, not just for the student, but for you as a university.
Yeah. Do you think most employers know what an LER is yet?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. What do you think it would take to get there?
Honestly, I think AI is going to be the catalyst that we've been needing.
Interesting. Tell me more.
Because everyone, including employers, not just the hiring managers that work for the employers, but actual employers are going to be like, hey, Susie, hiring HR lady, like, why don't we have enough candidates for this role? Like, oh, well, I saw 1,000 people applied, but how come I only have 2 interviews? It's like, well, when I did the screeners, like half of them all used AI for their resume. When I talked to them, none of them actually did the stuff that was on their resume. And so then the actual CEOs and the executive levels are going to be like, oh, we need a new solution for hiring and actually verifying skills of our pipeline, our candidate pipeline that cannot be done with AI.
You know, that makes sense because it really solves a few problems at once. So it saves time, it saves money. Going back to that ROI question, I think especially right now, a lot of folks are kind of looking at their statements and they're thinking, you know, how can we save money? How can we be more efficient? And I think I'll call it the traditional way of hiring, which is hilarious because it's maybe 20 years old, of like applicant tracking systems, and like you get a job lit and you can press a button and apply to it, and you put your PDF resume, and then you probably have to fill out your resume again on their proprietary system, and then it goes into a black hole that sometimes you hear back. Like that whole song and dance is really not good for anybody anymore. It's not good for the job seeker. It's really not great for a hiring manager. I mean, that's what I'm hearing too, is that, you know, the credentials don't even get you the job. They get you the interview. You get the job. But the fact of the matter is, if you have something to refer to and you have a portfolio and it's been verified, then like that part of it becomes the easy part instead of applying for the job, which most people, I would say, like is the hardest part, is getting the interview. So if it can get you the interview quickly, you can get yourself the job. And then the hiring manager has, you know, more diverse pool of individuals that are qualified. But the question is like, then who is the real best fit, which is like the human skills of the hiring manager is making that kind of evaluation. Like AI can't do that. Like who's going to fit into this office for whatever reason. There's a million reasons.
I actually think there's a gap in the market, and I entered the LER industry working for Smart Resume. And I think that they're a great product, but I think there's a gap still there where the product itself, like we need something where it's easy for an employer to give skills, right? Give the digital badges and also see the skills. And I think Smart Resume is a platform right now that is doing that or trying to do that. But I would like to see competition in it, right? Like, I think Smart Resume framework as a whole is good, but I think from like a product marketing aspect and a UX UI, like there's other things out there that are sexier and prettier, right? Like I'd much rather use LinkedIn to look at something than Smart Resume at the moment. I think they're working on it, but I think that's one of the gaps that we have, or an opportunity for this is I would love to see somebody with a lot of money come in and make a platform that makes it easy for this to all come together. Because again, I think AI is really going to be a catalyst. I think in the next 1 to 2 years, there's going to be multiple players that are bringing that to the market. Because like we need competition. I love Smart Resume. I think they're great. But I also think the more people we have in here, the more competitive you make things, the better the products get. So I think there's a huge opportunity for that. So anybody want to build something like that, you should.
Yeah, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to share something because this is also, I guess, a little bit low key of a news show in the sense that, like, how can you possibly keep up with all this stuff? So actually, your timing on the need for talent marketplaces is like really good, because essentially the submissions were due for the Connecting Talent to Opportunity Challenge recently. I know this is something that a lot of folks had their eye on, is a $15 million challenge. And for the sake of conflict of interest and transparency, I'm an advisor for this program. And I'm going to come into play later on, probably when things are being technically evaluated. But yeah, so the submissions are in for this already. And in, let's say, a year to 18 months, something like that, there's going to be a very kind of rich ecosystem of talent marketplaces, which is what I would say Smart Resume specifically kind of checks that box. They do a bunch of stuff around the edges, but I think the fact that talent marketplaces were very new when they kind of hit the scene, they really had that first movers advantage. And I think their integrations, this kind of thing, it's very good. But I think we're going to see a lot more of those kinds of systems in the near future. I know that Georgia, for example, I think it's an $8 million RFP that just got either completed or they're about to be completed, something like that. I don't chase RFPs. If people invite me to jump in on them, I'm more than happy to jump in. But like I run a for-profit consulting firm, and I don't have time to write 180 pages.
Like me. Like, I don't chase boys, but if they invite me to dinner, I'll come. Okay, fine.
Yeah, that's my policy. That's right. Like, I'm not gonna go out and say, "Hey, who's having dinner?" I'm gonna be like, I'll just look cute in the corner, and then like, if you choose me, then we'll see. You know, who knows? We keep it fun here. We're like,
we're just hanging
all
out.
right, so
peas in a
that's
pod.
what it is. That's right. This is the Hangout, which I have to mention again. If you're just jumping in the middle, this is the Skill Scoop Hangout. And if you want to subscribe to Skill Scoop, there's a banner at the bottom of the screen. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share. Hold on, sorry. I just got an error. I need to reload something. My email is throwing a fit. I'm like, I'm not even looking at my email.
I'm going to transition us into our next topic, which is burnout. And I also wanted to add in another one that I didn't submit into our pre-show notes, which is upskilling, because we also had 9 ways to help your employees upskill. And then we also covered some ways to help your employees not burn out. And I think those are relevant for anybody who's in the workforce.
Actually, the upskilling, there was, here you go, 9 ways to upskill in 2026. Mentorship, cohort-based learning, micro-learning, job rotation, stretch assignments, LERs, peer learning, coaching, and external courses. So you're right. We should mention that. And it was in that edition as well.
What do you think is the best way to upskill?
Oh boy, that's an interesting question. What is the best way to upskill? I would say cohort-based learning, but I also really like the idea of mentorship. So like I have a mentor, and I, as an educator, was a part of PLCs, right? Professional learning communities. And I feel like PLCs can go off the rails. So it depends who's in the cohort, right? Like a lot of times I found myself as the person who was like there to learn, and other people were there, like they were obliged to be there for whatever reason. Like, what are you doing here? But mentorship can be really, really valuable, big time. I think everyone, frankly, should have a mentor. And usually you don't work with your mentor. So that's why it's kind of a trick question, is like, if my employer told me to get a mentor, I would go, oh, okay, sure. But like where? I actually think it's really good if you don't work with your mentor. If you happen to have a boss or a manager or someone who mentors you and you work with them, amazing. But like, I think that can be tricky, because especially if you report to someone or something, then it's, so I would say mentorship is at the top of my list, but try to find a mentor who you don't work with or for, but is like adjacent to either where you are or where you want to go. Yeah.
I think
What do you think? What's your favorite?
in my experience, and most of my corporate experience has been in startups. I don't know that this is always the case when you work for like a big corporation with thousands of employees, but in at least my startup experiences, I think personal development is a key component to upskilling, because one of my favorite books that I read at a company that I was with for a while was Growth Mindset by Carol
Dweck.
Dweck, yeah, which is a pretty popular book. But having everybody read that together gave everybody the same paradigm. And it was easy for us to all build things together because we all came in with that same attitude. And so then everybody was upskilling on their own as a cultural byproduct of it. It wasn't a thing that needed to be structured. It was just like, oh, we're doing this new thing. I don't know how to do that. By the way, could I get a little bit of money to like learn it? Or like, I want to buy a book to learn about it. Be like, yeah, sure, no problem. And so we built this like culture of like getting ish done without needing to have a structure of like, oh, well, Bobby needs to learn to be better at finance. We should put him in a MBA course. It was just like Bobby was like, hey, I need to learn this Excel sheet. I'm going to learn pivot tables on my own, taking a YouTube course. I put it on the company credit card. It was $50 the course. I figured out how to do it myself. Or I don't know. I think that was one of the biggest ways that I've seen people upskill, is because it starts in your brain. It doesn't start in the structure that HR writes it all out, is my opinion on that. But of course, there's more things. You guys can go read the article about other ways that you can do that. And we also did mention like, well, what if you're not a big company and you're just a small business without an HR team? Like, how do you do this? So we have a little blurb about that as well.
You said a key word there, which jogged my memory, is that skill savings accounts. Really, a bill to introduce these nationally is all the rage at the moment. So from your lips to God's ears, as they say, right? So skill savings accounts. So this idea is very popular right now. It's a bipartisan idea, and essentially this is it would allow folks to contribute tax-free to skill savings accounts for the purposes of paying for qualified educational experiences. Think like non-credit bearing experiences for the purposes of professional development. And the total amount contributed by the employer won't exceed $5,250. And if a total amount contributed by an employer shall not exceed 10 grand. And the skill savings account balance in general cannot exceed $50,000.
Wait. So this is like a 401k for my skills?
Yeah, basically. That's exactly right.
What?
I know, right? It's like we all need to learn things and be professional. It's like, why can't I, for example, go down the street to my community college and enroll in a course that will make me a more competitive worker and learner?
How do we get in touch with Mr. Glenn Thompson?
I don't know.
You should help
He's a congressman.
We should put an ad in Skills Scoop and ask everybody to help support this and contact their congressman or woman to help support. I know. Genius, Mr. Thompson. You should tag him. So you got a mention at Skills Scoop today, sir. Bravo. Doing work for our government. Let's go. Oh my gosh. I know.
It's like all of the stories that come out of the news are always so doom and gloom. And like I don't really like, I hate to say this, but like, I don't really watch the news. I don't. I listen to NPR every once in a while and it makes me sad and then I turn it off. And then unless it's shout out to Brian Lehrer, WNYC, New York City is my favorite show. But that being said, I did want to pivot really quick, just for the sake of time, to the article on burnout. So we can just kind of chat about this really quick. Do you want to start with our top line quote here?
Give me one sec to open.
I'm just proud of myself because I put together this run of show.
SHRM 2026 State of the Workplace. I believe it's a white paper, yeah?
Yes.
Report. Yeah. They are reporting that 72% of workers say their organization could do more to prevent burnout.
That's right. That's exactly right. Burnout is one of those things that, especially folks who are new in their career or pivoting careers just really aren't adept at managing themselves. And I would argue that if you are an employer, it's in your best interest to make sure that your staff, i.e., your most valuable asset, like of your company, with the highest like investment that you're making, probably is in your employees. You want to make sure that they're doing their best work all the time. Stephen Covey calls this sharpening the saw. So even in his I think it's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he mentions this as the 7th habit of sharpening the saw. So do you want to go through the 5 ways to avoid burning out your best people?
Yeah, so I'll just quickly read the top headers here. So mapping out the skills your team is actually using. You're basically just skill mapping. The next is to track their capability, not just the output. The third is to make invisible work visible. That's a big, I think, especially for women. There are so many things, and we've written articles about this, is that there are a lot of roles that women take on that have nothing to do with their quote job title, like birthday gifts, coordinating the happy hours, buying the little decorations for the Christmas thing. And, there's all these little invisible chores, even writing notes in a meeting. It's like, oh, Thania, why don't you write notes? I'm like, I don't know, Bob, what about you? Why don't you write a note once in a while? Don't get me started on those things. And then number 4 is creating internal mobility before they're mentally checking out. Making it feel safe psychologically for somebody to come and say, I'm feeling burnt out, I need help. But if you have an environment where employees aren't feeling safe to do that, you're going to have silent burnout, and then you're just going to have people resigning. The next thing is helping employees own the story of their skills, having them be able to organize their skills data more intentionally is going to give them that confidence and understanding of what they're actually doing. So you're not burning out because you're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel and you're completing that dopamine hit. I think those are the 5. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I was LOLing off screen when you were like, I don't know, Bob, why don't you do it? Like, I was just, I was thinking, honestly, I was thinking of my wife, because she is a librarian by trade, and she's just the most organized person I've ever met, and proactive and disciplined, all the things that like an office manager or someone would have. But like, if they don't have an office manager, she's just the kindest person in the room who will like raise her hand and say, well, I'll do it. And then it'll be amazing. But like, I have a feeling that there are a lot of people out there, especially women, who feel like they become the default office manager, and you're not getting paid for that work. So it becomes a really easy way to get burnt out, and not even just like physically, but like emotionally. Like, it requires emotional energy to wrangle the cats as they speak. Like, it's a job for a reason, like.
And it's funny because I have been sharing on my personal Instagram account that I realized that I'm actually burnt out right now, and I'm in the middle of burnout. And one thing I don't think people talk about is when they're in the middle of it. I feel like we only hear about burnout when it's like, oh, here's what to do to avoid it, and here's what to do after you realize you're burnt out. But like, there are seasons where you are building something, or you're in a busy hustle season, building season, and you are tired and you're exhausted and whatever. But I don't think we talk enough about when you're in it. And I was having, Instagram chat stories with all my friends and followers and talking about it. And I realized from the feedback that I got that there are so many women that are feeling that burnout feeling because they have so many responsibilities at the office, so many responsibilities at home. And then there's all these like societal pressures as like what it's supposed to be a woman. It's like, you gotta drink enough water, you gotta exercise, you gotta be fit, but not too fit, because then you'll get in trouble if you're too fit and like, oh, you shouldn't be at the gym, you should be at home with your kids. And you should be a good corporate person, but not too good, because then you should like, there's all these standards and pressures and blah, 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 blah. So as somebody who's in burnout right now, your face looks like you're worried about me, but you don't need to be worried about. It's just, I think having the self-awareness of feeling like, oh man, what am I doing that is causing me to feel exhausted? And it's not like I don't have a physical exhaustion. It's just that I have been so focused on all of the micro things, and I have made the macro so sexy in my head, but the macro is so far away. And what I'm robbing myself of is celebrating the milestones that are micro, to complete the dopamine hit, because when you're in these long stretches of building, like we're building Skill Scoop, I have a personal business, I'm doing a variety of things, and they're long stretches, and I'm not getting the dopamine hit of completion of like, oh yay, I did it. And I think there's a lot of people, especially if you're not an entrepreneur and you're working for somebody else and you're in an office, is like day in and day out, you do the exact same things, and maybe you'll get a promotion, or then you get the promotion and you still feel burnt out. And it's like, well, there's multiple pieces and layers to burnout that is not just the corporate workplace. It can also be maybe you're not exercising enough, maybe you're not drinking enough water, and there's multiple components. But I do think it's important to recognize when you're in it and feel it, and then use that to recalibrate, not use it as like a death sentence, like, oh, I'm burnt out, the world's over. It's like, okay, signal, now we change, recalibrate, and make it so that we are focusing on the things that we need to focus on.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for your vulnerability. I mean, I like to think that this is a place where we can be honest.
Yeah.
This is like a personal conversation. So, and I think a lot of people can relate with what you said, Thania. I think that right now there are a lot of folks who, are in different stages of burnout. And I think this really connects back to what you said about neurodivergence, because I think it's easier for people with differences, basically, to get burnt out doing things that other people might not even consider to be like taxing, like, which is the connection with the LER stuff. Because like, if people are in the right role and they have the skills to do it, then maybe you would choose a different person to do something, knowing that it's much harder for person over here to do what you're asking them to do than person over here. And a lot of times within teams, they talk to each other, but when you're delegating and when things, especially at scale, it can be very easy for people to be doing the wrong work, frankly. And that affects the business.
To go back to us talking about not watching the news, that is another huge component to burnout, I think, that's occurring right now, is like, there's so much stimuli about the external world that we cannot handle that impacts us, like oil right now. Like, I can't go on vacation. I want to go to Europe and see my friend Gabby in London, but Norse Airlines literally canceled all of their flights from LAX to London because oil prices are so high. They're like, we're not going to make money on it. So now the thing that normally makes me excited about working so hard is to go and have a nice vacation. I can't even do. So I have an $800 credit with Norse that I can't use unless I fly to New York. And it's just like, and that just adds to your to-do list of stuff. You're like, rah, 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 rah. And so I think in addition to just like normal burnout, I think we are in a cultural environment, political environment, global environment where it is taxing to just turn on the TV, to open your phone and scroll, like, it's everywhere. And it's just like taxing. We weren't meant to take on so much stress from so many places,
Yeah.
We're supposed to be like in our little community and take on the stress of our little community. But because of internet, we can take on all the stress of the whole world. And it's so very heavy for all of us empaths. So if you're burnt out, you're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it is graduation season. So I think for a lot of our audience, they're in education, higher education specifically. I just wanted to extend congratulations for all the folks who really worked through that burnout at the end of their last semester, either from the institutional perspective or from the learner's perspective. There's a lot of graduations going on right now. So I feel like there is an end, right? And that's like a physical manifestation of that end. But like, I think for all of us, being very clear about the bounds of what we're willing to do is really critical, to avoid that burnout. And I'm definitely feeling a little bit of it too. Like, I think when it comes to so this is another nerdy thing that I'm going to mention, but this is me. This is how my brain thinks. Like the other night I was in bed and I was like looking at vector calculus and I was like, oh yeah, like it was very meditative for me. But if you are suffering from burnout and you're wondering why you can be so triggered by what's on the phone, nothing's happening to you physically, you read something and now you feel like the world is coming to an end. There's also a really good book written about that. It's one of my favorite books. It was written by Robert Sapolsky and it's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. It's about why humans are a little different than zebras in the sense that when zebras see a lion coming, they don't freak out automatically because they see lions every day. But as soon as the lion starts chasing them, that's when it's time to get up and go. And that's what your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems are for, is making that determination and then giving you the energy when you need it, but not giving you the energy when you don't need it, which can be very bad. And it happens to people all the time because of the nature of stresses in our lives. And we're reacting to things that aren't right in front of us, right? There's no lion, but we feel like there's a lion chasing us. And it's because we have the same nervous system as a zebra, but we have very different inputs and stimuli. So it's not you, it's the system, it's your brain, you were born with it. There's nothing you can do about it. But like learning and being aware of when those things trigger you and like putting things down, taking a minute. I like to run. So like when I'm feeling that like cabin fever, that like craziness, I like literally stop what I'm doing and I go outside, I just run. And I don't listen to a podcast. I don't listen to the news. Sometimes I'll listen to music, sometimes, but I'll just go and run. I'll do like a cool 5K. And like, even when it hurts, even when I don't want to do it, because I know that when I get back, I'll feel better. Like I will. My brain, it's like like tidying, you know, kind of stuff. So find that thing and just do it. Like, because you're the most important person. When I was I was a lifeguard when I was in high school. And the first thing they teach you is you can't save someone from drowning if you are drowning. Mm-hmm. And then I was an EMT after that. And they were like, you can't save someone, period, if you are putting yourself in danger. So it's like literally the intuitive first response of first responders is to say, you know, am I putting myself at danger? Am I making the situation worse by engaging with it? And if the answer is yes, then, you know, maybe it's consider like a different approach, a different path, or just pause.
I hate to interrupt you in such a delightful, passionate, heartfelt speech, but I have a recording error on my end. I think that I have exceeded something, so it might not be capturing some of the things we're discussing. So maybe we'll wrap it up and invite everybody to join us next month when we have 2 guests on. We have Colin Reynolds, who just wrote the article on the ROI. And then we also have Lisa Virtue, who is a change management consultant. And she just wrote an amazing article for us on how you can actually get change adopted in your LER organization. And she'll be joining us next Friday as well. So we're going to have a very jam-packed show next week.
Cool. Well, I'm checking the LinkedIn. It looks like we're still in business. Okay, so great. But there's no reason why we can't bid adieu. Thank you so much. The thing I do want to mention, though, is that you can capture our next episode on June 5th at 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern. And we're going to have Colin on that call, as we said. Don't forget to subscribe to Skill Scoop at skillscoop.com. Don't forget to follow Skill Scoop on LinkedIn and share this episode with one person who needs to hear it, right? Especially if they're feeling a little burnt out. They're not alone. All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys. Happy Friday.